extra publication. Yeah, that's nice. So there's actually a magazine, which doesn't work for my virtual background. This lists 1,456 different symbols. That's not working well, is it? Yeah, okay, I tried. Don't know them all. Some are small, some are large. And this is, of course, now, very big business for lots and lots of people. How did it start? Way back in the day, so we're talking before the 1920s, before the 1930s, basically what happened is that the chief rabbi of every city ran the kosher program for that city. If you wanted to be kosher, you had to deal with him, whoever he is. And that worked well for, a couple thousand years. Then in the US, this phenomenon came up that was called interstate trucking. And so now we started shipping ingredients back and forth across the country. How do you deal with that? So stuff would come and would come with a letter, that I'm the chief rabbi of Portland, Oregon, and I certify this to be kosher. Get the stuff, and it comes to the rabbi in, Cincinnati, Ohio, who says, great, who is this guy? Does he know what he's doing? What is he doing? So a group of rabbis got together in New York, and they said, let's work out a plan. If kosher law says you have to maintain this level, let's raise the bar a bit. Not a lot, but not close. So you get room to have an oops. And we're going to certify things at this level and above. So we'll make a symbol. And if you are part of our group, you can use that symbol. And then on the receiving end, at least you'll know basically what type of standards are being held. That symbol then was the OU. And we went then from Heinz baked beans, I think, was the first product in the US to carry the OU Kosher symbol. And now I just looked online, we have over 1.2 million products certified just by the Orthodox Union. So while we're the largest kosher certification agency, we're clearly not the only one. I mean, if there's a mathematician, we have probably 75% of products anywhere in the world that carry any symbol, carry an OU. The rest, someone else that can give you an idea of the magnitude of, roughly of what's known. It's rough numbers from marketing guys, so I don't know how true they are, but it seems to make sense. So once the OU was up and doing its thing, some other rabbis said, well, listen, if they're doing it, why we could do the same thing? There's no reason why not. Then you had some communities set up Kashrus organizations. Some private individuals set up Kashrus organizations. There's nothing in Jewish law that says that you can't. That, if ideally you should know what you're doing, but rabbi can set up and say, I say this is kosher. And why not? So the really only difference is what do you do with that, what they call it, the excess revenue over expenses, if you're lucky enough to have that. So the OU plows it back into OU different programs, OU website, ou.org. You can see the 5 million things that we're into. But again, there's nothing wrong if someone wants to do it privately and just make earn the living out of that. And so that's in very rough terms how we got to where we are now. A lot of it propagates itself. So if you go to a client who wants something certified and he has an ingredient that is not certified, so tell them, listen, if you want everything going into your product needs to be kosher, so this needs to be kosher also. So the most common response is that they'll contact their supplier and they'll tell them, listen, you got to get kosher. Now, who do you pick? The path of least resistance is normally to have your guy go with whoever you're with, because that's, you've got acceptance that way. Not to say there isn't cross-agency acceptance. The whole business is based on cross-agency acceptance. I'll digress a bit. I guess digress a lot. It used to be in the 80s and the 90s. I started in kosher 1988. That's a story in and of itself. This was not a career path anybody picks. And the worst part of kosher certification at the time was getting the kosher letter out of the next guy for something that you're buying. So if my company was buying soybean oil from, Joe's oil supply down the street, the absolute worst part of the whole process was getting them to give you the kosher letter. Why? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. Because here they decided they want to have kosher for whatever reason. They went through the process of getting certified. They paid a fee, because it's not free, to get kosher certified. They got their letter, and they don't want to give it up. No, you have to talk to the secretary. They have to have sales if it's okay to give it out. It was totally awful. Happily, we've moved into the digital era. So there's a lot of agencies that have joined different consortiums, and they have these digital letters of certification, which basically means that like the OU is part of the UKD, Universal Kosher Directory. I should know what that is offhand, right? Anyhow, so we've got like 8 agencies that we work together with. It's a massive database that we all pull from, and it just makes the certification process easier, because now instead of asking for a letter, a lot of it you can just look up online through the protected database and say, yeah, you want to do that. So now I want to buy, I'm a baker, I want to buy blue sprinkles, right? I can search the database, find out which suppliers are already kosher. If I cut a deal with them that I'm happy with the price. So instead of getting a letter and sending it in and having someone review it and writing back, it's okay, it's not okay, I can just click on that link, say, add it to my approved ingredient list, submit it, and most, if it's in the database, then those already just get approved automatically. If it's another agency, then that may take one day. If it's, depending what it is, gets approved, I have a constantly updated list of approved ingredients that I use, and then I can apply for my new product, and I can get that letter generated also in less than a day. So it's worked out pretty well. How am I doing?
Related to a few questions.
Yes.
First of all, okay. So first of all, could you tell us what is the OU standard? So someone sees the OU, what standard of kosher does that mean? What does that tell us about the product?
It tells you that it's kosher. So there's certain, if something is, are we familiar with terms of Pasisrol, Cholesterol?
We learned about Pasisrol last week.
Okay, so if something is, there's some certifications where Pasisrol is a default status. It is not with the major organizations in the United States. So if something is OU certified and Pasisrol, that letter would say Pasisrol next to the name. And in the US, the OU accepts Cholov Stam, regular milk, normal milk. And so if you want Cholov Yisrael, then if it doesn't say so, then it is not. Level is hard. I mean, I'm not sure how to deal with what does level mean. Yeah.
Okay, fair. I'll follow up. Are there certain things that clearly don't need a certification?
Yes. Yeah, there are. Everybody hates to put out that type of a list, because how do you tell somebody that you change your mind? The changes aren't dramatic, but they do happen. If you're like what? Bottled water, unflavored bottled water, bottled seltzer, canned seltzer without flavors, you can buy any of them. It doesn't need certification. Flour, without weird stuff put into it, just normal flour. Even, nut flours, those are all okay without certification. Salt is okay without certification. The things that basically the food scientists haven't figured out a way to mess up yet without certification, you can buy without certification. That will lead into then, so why do we certify some of that stuff? Because the client asked. Do you have to buy salt with an OU on it? You don't have to buy salt with an OU. Why is there salt with an OU? The company asked. Morton said, "Hey, we want this on there."
We have a question on the flip side for the question on the chat. Could you tell us what are things that people think they don't need a Hechsher? They think it's just a raw product, but maybe you give us examples of why it's necessary to have those, to make sure to have the Hechsher.
So there, okay, offhand I'm drawing a blank, but generically there was a thing back in the maybe 1960s where many consumers, pretty straight, I would say probably modern Orthodox leaning, said, listen, you have to write all your ingredients on a package. Why can't I just read that and be happy? I could see what's in it, and if there's nothing objectionable, so good. What's the problem? They did it with candy bars. They did it with seasonings. How tragic is it? Well, it's not so simple. Part of the reason is there are a lot of things that are if it's under 2%, you don't have to list it on the label. If it's a processing aid, you don't have to list it on the label. So, you have items such as that are under TTB, alcohol. They have different rules for what you have to write and what you don't have to write. So it's not that clear. It's not that descriptive as to what's happening. A lot of people think, well, if it's a natural flavor, what could be wrong with a natural flavor? It's natural. There are a million things wrong with natural flavors. First off, a lot of them aren't natural. Natural, depending on the application, can refer to the ingredients, but even that's a misnomer. If you were, a classic example they give is if you're making a strawberry drink, a strawberry juice drink, and you want to have a chocolate strawberry flavor, because who doesn't like chocolate dipped strawberries? Even if you use a flavor derived from natural chocolate, that would have to be labeled as natural and artificial, because chocolate's not natural to strawberry. So things get messed around. And then basically what they do to make natural flavors, they look for the chemical components that make up the attribute that you want, and you use that to produce your product. So there are a lot of natural butter flavors that have no butter or dairy in them whatsoever. So it's not clear forward with what you see is what you get.
Okay, 2 questions from the chat.
Okay.
What's the difference between OU and OU Parv? Is OU
okay.
Parv even if it doesn't say the word Parv?
Right. So the OU symbol and OU Parv mean exactly the same thing. The default status of an OU is Parv. It's up to the manufacturer to decide how much territory they want to give on their label to kosher declarations. They want to write OU and it's Parv, it's fine. They want to write OU Parv, no difference. There was a story a long time ago that said, well, if it has an OK and the word Parv, therefore it's going to be pas Yisrael, because one cookie company wrote Parv. But if it doesn't say Parv, then it's not. Oh, absolutely bogus. Absolutely bogus. No relationship one to the other. So same thing. If you want,
to reiterate your point, OU is Parv. If it doesn't say OUD or I don't know what other symbol, DE, whatever, it is Parv. They could write it or not. That's a company choice.
Yes.
But OU automatically means Parv unless stipulated otherwise.
Right, or unless it's a mistake, mean, people make mistakes.
Okay.
The problem with humans is that we're human. But yeah, barring errors, yes, OU by itself. I mean, there was an OU on some ghee, which is clarified butter. So, oh, this is parve, right? No, it's not. It's full on dairy, but presuming everything went well, yes, an OU and OU parve, exactly the same thing. The P next to an OU means Passover. The P next to every symbol except triangle K means Passover. Triangle K, the P means parve.
Wow, interesting. Okay, question about liquor. Does liquor need a certification? How does that work? Why do most liquors not have certifications that people seem to be drinking?
Okay, so most don't have, because when you stack up the amount of business they get from Jews alone, it's not a lot. The Goyim drink just a lot more than we do. You are seeing more of it now because some companies have figured out that it's pretty inexpensive to get kosher certification, and it doesn't take an awful lot of new sales to kick up your, make some money on that. So you're seeing more and more. There are liquor lists. A lot of these things, it's like everything else in life. The more you look at it, the closer you look at it, the worse it gets. But there are some generic principles that they have that, well, if it's not made, if they're making it anyway, and the target audience really isn't Jews, it's like you're not making, basically gefilte fish. Then we can look at what's happening, and are you reasonably happy with that? And the stuff that's not right, there are rabbinic reasons to say that it's okay. That concept does exist. The very touchy area is Scotch. That's a whole discussion in itself as to what works, what doesn't work. But it's, what the problem with a lot of these generalities is that processing changes, but everyone remembers the okay answer. You had beef gelatin is not made the way it used to be made in the 40s, when Chaim Ozer wrote this long tshuva saying why it's okay for royal pudding to be kosher. And there's still some rabbis saying, well, he said this is kosher, so it's okay. They don't make it that way anymore. It's totally changed, and the reasoning behind it is no longer applicable. So it gets to be a bit of a mess. Your turn.
Okay. No, I mean, first of all, we're open to other questions, but I've following up on the general kosher conversation. How should a person know which kosher symbols outside of the great OU is acceptable and not? And more interestingly, are there certain things where you say, don't worry too much about it, this type of product, as long as there's any symbol, this type of, whereas other products, be more conscientious? Is there some sort of line? So if it's canned pineapple, maybe more lenient, maybe when it comes to baked products or cheese or whatever, maybe
okay.
More. So A, how should somebody, a kosher consumer, how should they know? And B, does it make a difference? And yeah, Mel wrote, and we mentioned this last week, there is the CRC app, which is really helpful.
Very helpful.
But she's asking, is there any information on the database on approved hashgachas, following up on this question?
Okay, so I'm not sure I remember all the points you just asked about, but most.
All right, let's start with, how should somebody know about kosher certifications? What's good, what's not, and where is it more critical to know?
Okay, so canned fruits, if there's no grape juice or no flavor added, and it's not made in China, you're basically going to wind up being okay. Doesn't matter if it's packed in its own juice, packed in sugar, packed in water. That they all seem to work out. Canned vegetables do not work that way. The vegetable guys figure out how to make all sorts of non-kosher items where the fruit guys didn't. So while you may pick up something with questionable hashgacha or no hashgacha, like the pineapple that you mentioned, if it's pineapple juice, ascorbic acid, whatever, no flavors, it's going to be okay. Whereas you pick up a can of canned corn with no hashgacha or a not well, accepted hashgacha is a nice way to put it. You could be in a world of hurt over that because of other items, other things that are done in that plant or on that line. Like what? Green beans and bacon, pork and beans, and stuff like that. The fruit guys don't have a lot of those options. So one place actually making chicken soup and canning it. So what else was on there on your list?
Okay, so wait, just how should somebody know what's a good hechsher or not?
Without getting sued, that's a hard question. I mean, you have some, who are the major hashgachas in the U.S.? The OU, the Chaf K, the OK, the Star K. You're basically on good ground with that. The CRC that we mentioned, Atlanta Kashrus Commission. You don't see it so maybe in the East Coast you see more than we hear. They're also very good. Kosher Check from Vancouver, COR from Toronto, Montreal, the MK are good. I'm actually looking at the cover of the magazine, right? So Diamond K and the Batman K out of Australia, those are good hashgachas. Detroit,
would you say that most, okay, so I mean, I guess you gave a general gist, but short of that, you're saying.
Short of that, the normal answer we tell people is you speak to your local Orthodox rabbi.
Right, and then I call you. Okay, I got you. I know what to do.
Yeah, I can't talk with that.
So the CRC app would be a great.
CRC app is very convenient place to look.
Yeah.
Like, does everyone agree 100% with everything they write? Of course not. But you always have solid footing for what they write.
Okay, now here's it. Would most things that have a badatz hechsher on it of their local community, would that, as a general rule, be acceptable?
Would have to depend on which badatz. Badatz is a very common word to throw on your title in Israel, and unfortunately, not everybody plays the game the same way.
Okay. We have a question. What about vinegar? I guess the question is regarding Hechsherim and vinegar.
Okay, so I'll give a double talk answer. It's basically very difficult to find white distilled vinegar in the U.S. that isn't kosher. That being said, you can mess it up at the bottling plants and whatnot, but at least on the industrial side where it's made, it's very hard to find white vinegar that wouldn't pass, at some level. So you should have hashgacha because a lot of the bottling plants will also do, wine vinegars, and a lot of that is hot production is one issue, and storing something a liquid over 24 hours also is equated to cooking. So that could also cause some other, kalim equipment issues.
Okay, question.
So the short answer is yes, you should buy vinegar with proper hashgacha.
Right.
If you used it and you didn't, there's often reason to say that after the fact, but you don't have to throw stuff out. Using the rest of the bottle is a different question, but
We talk about hashgachas on restaurants.
Ouch.
How does that apply? And then, what's the rule of hashgachas in restaurants? How do they work in the restaurants? And then I want to ask if, I'll follow up. Let's start with that. So let's talk about hashgachas in restaurants.
Okay, hashgacha in restaurants. That's an absolute minefield. So there are lots of things to look at. First off, do you recognize who it is that's giving the certification? Is it, and if you recognize the name, is it someone who's generally considered to be reputable? Then what are they doing? What is their policy on pas Yisrael? What's the policy on Chalav Yisrael? Do they allow both? Only one? What's the story with vegetables? What gets checked? What doesn't get checked? How do they check? How often? There's some hashgachas in New York. I see that certified restaurants that are open 7 days a week because they're owned by non-Jews. What happens Friday night, Shabbos day? You'd want, if it's not something you recognize, then what are they doing to control cooking process? Because you can take, you take an egg, throw it in a frying pan and cook it. If it's done by a Jew, it's kosher. If it's done by someone who isn't Jewish, it's not kosher. Same thing with a lot of vegetables that require what's called bishul yisrael, that a Jew has to participate in the cooking. So if you want to walk into a vegan restaurant and have, rice and cut up squash on it, and there's no mashgiach there, or a Jewish person didn't light the fire that where you cook the rice and cook the squash, so it's not kosher. I mean, not kosher to the extent that you brought it home. You'd have to re-kosher those items in your kitchen if you heated it. So it's rough, and I based on consumer calls I get, I see there are lots and lots of people giving lots and lots of hashgachos in New York on restaurants, and not everybody's up to par.
Okay, so on the Upper East Side, there's a place under the OU that's an ice cream shop, and it's open on Shabbos.
Okay, like a Baskin Robbins type a scoop shop.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they prepare food in a restaurant, OU requires that a mashgiach is there the entire time. An ice cream shop where you're presumably not cooking, I would imagine, then it's called Yetziv V'Nichlas. The mashgiach will come and go, and he would have a handle on as to what they're buying, how often, what are they using, and all those items would be acceptable. So you could do that.
Okay, so you're saying
the cones that come in are all kosher. The ice cream that comes in,
they're not preparing anything.
They're not cooking anything. They're just assembling parts. So you could do that. If it's not Jewish owned and not in a predominantly, Shomer Shabbos neighborhood, many people would allow that. You've got Carvel stores all over New York that are open 7 days a week.
Right.
Same concept.
Okay, and I want to ask about hashgacha. There are people, I don't want to say a lot, there are people in New York and the Upper East Side or our community, not our community, I should say, who they go to non-kosher restaurants, but they say, I'm just ordering a salad, or I'm just going to get a fish. What's your non-OU opinion on that?
Okay, I'm glad you said that. My non-OU opinion is...
Your OU opinion is they should get a Hechsher, I know that.
Right. My non-OU
opinion on...
I think it's really problematic to do that. Fish that's cooked, for starters, is always a problem. Multiple problems. You have one, you don't know what else is cooked in that oven. There could have been non-kosher fish. Cooking fish itself requires bishul yisrael. So if the rabbi is designated to not turn on that oven, then it's by definition not a kosher product. Salads, there's various dressings that aren't kosher. Certain vegetables that are considered to have a sharp taste, like onions. Slice an onion and you slice, cheese to go in somebody else's salad with the same knife. Even though you wiped it, still doesn't work out to be kosher. It's doesn't work out nicely. If you had to go for a business meeting you couldn't get out of, get a bottle of water, can of Coke.
Okay, thank you. All right, so and then just a few different questions. What is the letter K, just the K symbol on canned goods, during goods like cornflakes, etc.? What is the letter K?
So you cannot copyright a letter of the alphabet. So in a lot of places like Kellogg's, before they switched to the OU, use the letter K. And when they were asked why, because they had the Vodafone in Massachusetts, why don't you use their symbol? So no, we don't want to use a symbol because if we ever decide to change rabbis, we don't want to throw out millions of dollars worth of packaging. Okay, I hear the concern. They switched to OU, and you see it's taken them years to get through inventory of boxes, even with label changes and this and that. It's just crazy. So you can't copyright it. That means anyone can they can put a K on and say whatever they want. There are certain states, such as New York, that if you make a claim on a box that a reasonable consumer would presume to mean kosher, you have to have somebody on file saying that it's kosher. Whether that person is acceptable, not acceptable, did anything, didn't do anything, is Orthodox, traditional, conservative, the law doesn't address that. You just have to have a letter from somebody. That's why we don't poo-poo things with a K, unless it's, well known, well advertised, and they're working on changing the symbols that you know.
So in summation, the letter K means nothing. You have to find out about that specific product.
Yes, correct.
Fresh. If a person wants to go to the regular store and buy fresh fish, does it need a hashgacha?
Does not need hashgacha. You as the consumer become the mashgiach, the person saying that it's kosher. You'd want them to wash off the cutting board and the knives well beforehand. Should be clean, nothing on it, no oil or residue from the last fish, and the knife should be cleaned, ideally with soap beforehand. And the fish itself, you have to be able to find 2 scales that you can remove by hand without tearing the skin. If you can do that, that's a sign of that it's a kosher fish, and you're okay. If it doesn't have it, it's like then you're just relying on what they're calling it, and he's an honest guy. Doesn't work. The largest area of fraud, according to the FDA, is what they call species substitution, selling you one fish and it's really another. Close to that is olive oil, but most of the stuff in olive oil where they cheat is just country of origin, as opposed to giving you cottonseed oil instead.
So you're saying the fish, no problem. You're the mashgiach, so you need to see 2 pieces of the scale. Can you say that again?
No, you need to be able to remove 2 scales from the fish to prove that it's a kosher fish. So you can usually find scales even on a clean fish by the gills, and the Chinese have figured out a way where they actually glue skin patches onto fish to try to sell them as kosher.
Wow. So how are we getting around that?
If the fish didn't come from China, you don't have a problem. Or if the skin's on the whole fish, it's also not an issue. But industrially, they sell fish that has like a 1-inch patch of skin on it to prove that it's kosher. And food glue and a Chinese entrepreneur have worked out to be fraudulent.
Is that made in the Wuhan lab or in other different labs?
I'm sorry?
I asked if that was made in the Wuhan Chinese lab.
From Wuhan?
I'm kidding. Okay, fine.
I think Wuhan is landlocked.
Do vitamins that don't have gelatin or doesn't say have gelatin, do they need a hashgacha?
Always better with. I'm going to say you should have it. Why? Because a lot of them have different stearates. Magnesium stearate, calcium stearate. You can derive it from coconut. You can derive it from animals, and you don't have to declare on the label what's what. The dryers that a lot of pills go into are used hot, and it's again, it's one of the things. The more you look at, the kind of worse it gets. There's some very well-established companies that have hashgacha, which provide a lot of these items that are good, good quality items, as opposed to some of the mom and pop brands that don't always get rave reviews. So you should. Aside from that, if your physician, meaning a licensed practitioner, tells you to take something very specifically, I want you to take this, Moshe Feinstein said basically you take what the doctor ordered and we'll figure out afterwards why it's okay. You know, I'll stand on a soapbox for a minute and argue that every year there's, you know, people decide to be incredibly religious and say, you know, Passover's coming, I'm not taking this medicine, it's not on some list. And you find people doing this with heart medications, and, you know, not everybody's here Shavuos that was here Pesach. It's a wrong approach. Very, very touchy subject.
We have a question. What role does the mashgiach play in the big food, let's say, beverage factories? Yes. An example is like, is there a full-time mashgiach at Coca-Cola? What capacity are the mashgiachim in big factories working?
Okay, so as a Coca-Cola mashgiach, I can answer that. Most factories outside of Israel, where you've got lots of people you need to employ, most factories, you know, unless there's something incredibly kosher sensitive that they're doing, or if they have to kosher and they can't do it without someone present to verify what happened, do not have full-time supervision. We come and go, we have a schedule, we have lists of ingredients of what they're allowed to have, and you check to see, you know, what came in, what went out, what do they make, what are they making, how are they making it, what else is being done. And that's how the certification works.
Okay, let's do a quick question on the vinegar follow-up. Balsamic or red wine vinegar different than white wine vinegar. White vinegar, I think you added that. Answer that because the wine you said was the biggest.
White distilled is normally from grain, and wine vinegar obviously is from grape product.
That would be a problem. What about question about canned fish, salmon or tuna? I guess regarding needing a hechsher or what type of hechsher.
Okay.
I know there's been an issue of tuna.
Right. So yeah, canned fish needs to have the hechsher because a lot of these plants do other things, and you want to make sure that, you know, if they're doing offline products, either they're kosher or that they cleaned up the right way. I don't know. Time for a stupid story? It's a couple minutes long. Yes? Okay. So
yeah, it's the gory details of the glory of the mashgiach. You want to hear
it. So I used to live in Louisiana, and I got sent from New Orleans, the western side of the state, to look at a new applicant who's going to make canned sweet potatoes. Okay. Go over there. The factory operates at best 3 months out of the year, just when the potatoes are harvested. Went through the whole place, you know, they're set up to peel, cook, and can potatoes, you know. How hard is this? Went through their receiving logs as to what they purchased, went through the label room, what are they labeling, and everything just worked out fine. It's like, you know, other than the 3-hour drive each way, it was pretty much a slam dunk day. Getting ready to leave, we walk back into the office, and, you know, God is good. For some reason, I just turned my head to the left as you were saying goodbye and looked down the hallway, and I saw a large kettle on wheels sitting in the middle of the hallway in the office building. So I asked my host, I said, you know, why is that there? Like, why do you have this cooking kettle in the office building? Rabbi, we're so sorry. There's a leak in the closet, and that's why it's in the hallway. Okay. Why do you have a cooking kettle in the office building? Oh, that's what you meant. Because we make shrimp soup. You make what? Shrimp soup? My heart went through the floor. Like, how the hell did I miss that? You know, it kind of changes everything that we're going to have to do. And, you know, my heart's going bang, 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 bang. I said, okay, can you walk me through that process? Like, what? And, you know, he describes how they make it. And I said, okay, where did I miss? Okay, there's no shrimp in the freezer. It's off season now. I can hear that. There's no labels. There's nothing, no production records. How did that happen? Oh, we don't keep that. What do you mean don't keep that? We ship the cans to the customer in Florida. Where are the labels? We don't label it. They label it. You can't ship product across state lines without a label on it. Right, we know that. How do you do it? The boss says it's his problem. He doesn't care. He has an agreement with the guy buying it that he'll take responsibility. That probably doesn't hold up in court. Where are your production records? We send that with the soup. You're the manufacturer. You're responsible. If there's one can is off, you're the guys that are coming after. No, he said they agreed to take all that responsibility also. So I asked him, did you ever hear of Bon Vivant Soup? It's a large soup manufacturer in Chicago that is not around anymore because they had botulism. And the FDA came in and paid him a visit. It wasn't pretty. He said, yes, you have a 5-day hold after you make the soup. But if something grows after that, not in the statistical norm, just outside of that, you got people getting either sick or dying. And when they come to pay you a visit as the manufacturer, you can show absolutely nothing as to what you did to say that you went through all the right steps. He said, yeah, that's so I'm like, this is just awful. But it's shrimp is seasonal. It's only around a couple months and it's not the time when you do potatoes. So okay, we can send someone in and just kosherize every year before production. What other soups do you make? No, that's it. Really? That's it? Yeah, just shrimp. Never do anything else. Oh yeah, we do alligator soup like once or twice a year. How do you make alligator soup? The guy sent us dried alligator meat and we make soup out of it. Dried alligator meat is not seasonal. That you can do anytime. Like, oh Lord. So the product they wind up getting certification in the long run, and they do a full plant kosherization before every season, just because of that. It's like, so canned vegetables really ought to have certification. Long answer to a short question.
My son,
Hi.
wait, my son wants to know if you know the secret for Coke.
The secret for?
The secret formula for Coke. You said you worked there.
Oh, so part of the confidentiality agreement we have to sign with Coca-Cola says you will not discuss what you see inside the plant for a period of 10 years after your last visit. I was just at Coke and I'm going next week. So yeah, we can't really talk about that right now.
All right. Thank you for
Does Coca-Cola respect the rabbi? Like, do they, wow, the rabbi's here, we gotta, make sure everything's kosher? Or are they like, who's this guy?
No, it's a very respectful company. I go to 3 of the syrup plants, and it's great. Really, very, very, very mentioned place. Nothing to do with corporate politics, whatever they're supporting or not supporting out of Atlanta, we don't know. But the manufacturing plants, phenomenal people, very open about what they're doing, how they're doing it. Any records we ask to see, even things that are in future planning that they're working on, they're very, very open.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you very much, Rabbi Nathanson.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Is it okay if we share your number or email for those?
Yeah, email's great.
Email's great. We'll share your email address. I believe it's nathanson@ou.org.
So they tell me.
Right?
So they tell me.
I'll really tell you. And I want to thank you very much. This was awesome, and it gives more of an appreciation, especially that great story about alligator meat or what go into a restaurant. I think it understands that, just because somebody says something you got to know a lot more about what else was cooked there, etc.
It's like everything, the devil's in the details.
Right, I see that. I see the general rule of Rabbi Nathanson is
I'm ready to
the
get
more-
the question.
okay. The more you know about something, the less you're going to probably want to eat it, at least from a kosher perspective, maybe otherwise as well. So, but very much appreciated. And with that, I want to turn the screen over to Mitch. Please, Mitch. Okay, we pulled up this common approved
Hey.
kosher symbols. Rabbi Nathanson, any comment on these? Would you say that these are commonly approved symbols?
Yes, so Part K was bought out by the OK, so that should be disappearing. Below it, HKA is from Houston, and the Hashgacha is okay. The OU kind of disagrees with them on how they check the vegetables for certain things, but it's a small percentage of what they do. Yeah, the rest okay. Star D, Star K, okay, or B, KVH, yep, all good guys.
Okay, thank you. That's for
Can I
everyone to
check
know.
this?
Awesome. All right, so this Sunday, this is just advertisement. Rabbi Nathanson, you can join us as well. We have a hike and dinner. It's our second one. Looking forward to hiking dinner, which is at Blue Mountain Reservation. RSVP online, you get all the details, etc. Next Wednesday, we're learning our final kosher class about kosher drinks. But before the next Wednesday, community security service. So everybody, having a 1 hour Zoom next Wednesday, 6 to 7, to everybody get heightened awareness of how to be secure for us as individuals and us as a community as well.
On the Zoom channel?
No, you have to sign up and they're going to send out a link. Great question. Yeah. This is a Chabad in Montauk, Shabbos in Montauk, I should say, end of July. We're looking forward to that. But thank you again, Rabbi Nathanson, very much.
Thank you.
For you always being accessible and available.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you very much. And Tov, everyone. Very much appreciated.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That's all.
Thank you.